that really him? I don't know, he looks
They
unstable.
stare. They fume. Your face, cheeks, time fractures, control slips, rules bend, unseen hands tremble, jealousy drips, chaos grins, secrets simmer. No warning, no mercy. You ascend, they crumble. All mirrors lie, all systems break. The city hums, lights flicker, shadows bend, no one notices. I glide through streets, unnoticed, cafes steaming with warmth, alleys smelling of rain and rust, crowded sidewalks buzzing with life. They pass, blind, deaf to the tremors beneath. I see the cracks, the tiny fractures threading through their orderly routines. A misstep here, a glance there, enough to nudge the world slightly off its axis. Small, invisible, perfect. A barista spills coffee, not on purpose. Or maybe it is. A friend laughs at a joke too late. Their eyes betray a flicker of discomfort, unrecognized even by them. A stranger's reflection lingers too long in a shop window. These are whispers of chaos, tiny variables hidden in plain sight, each one a seed, and I am the wind. Time itself hesitates. People think they control their days. They think their smiles, their frowns are their own. But I know better. Every reaction, every twitch, every heartbeat is part of a sequence I can feel. Unseen, untouchable, I toy with these threads. A subtle smirk curves my lips. They will never know why their world shifts, why their comfort cracks. I pass a mirror in a narrow corridor. My reflection grins, and for a moment it seems alive, not me. Something more, something older, sharper. A secret hand tracing the outlines of their lives. The fractures multiply. A misjudged word here, a misread glance there, a moment of envy. Tiny, imperceptible, yet enough. Enough to make them stumble, to make them falter, to make them notice, without knowing why, an instability in the air. I watch, silent. Every move a test, every look a challenge. They are caught in invisible currents. The stronger they try to anchor themselves, the faster the world around them shifts. Patterns emerge, unseen, unclaimed. Chaos is a friend, a companion in the shadows. And I am the conductor. Control is an illusion. It cracks, it bends, it fractures. And when they realize it, when the smallest tremor becomes a canyon in their lives, I will be there, smiling, watching, unbroken. I am the unseen variable, the disruption, the dark echo they never saw coming. They think they see, they think they know, but I see them, every twitch, every hesitation. Jealousy hums. It's a rhythm, predictable, chaotic, deliciously fragile. Like a chemical reaction, it waits, silent, patient, until the slightest spark ignites it. I walk among them, and their envy unfolds like clockwork. A smile too bright, a laugh too free, a glance too long. Each one feeds the algorithm. Each one writes its own trap. I move through cafes, through office lobbies, through crowded subway cars. I watch subtle shifts, colleagues measuring each other's worth, lovers comparing shadows, friends whispering numbers in invisible currencies. Hidden clubs exist, of course, clubs they don't even know they're members of. Unspoken rules, invisible tests, and every test, every observation is mine to orchestrate. A compliment slips past my lips, not even a thought behind it. And yet chaos blooms. One notices, another hesitates. A third glances at a reflection, suddenly uncertain. Patterns emerge in the margins, the raised eyebrow, the sudden tension, the microsecond of panic. These are not accidents. They are the algorithm at work. And I am the code that bends it. I linger by mirrors, shop windows, car doors. Reflections betray them. I see the envy carved into their expressions, subtle, polite yet poisonous. They try to anchor themselves, to regain control. But control is a formula they don't understand, a system I've already hacked. Every gesture, every laugh, every sideways glance adds data to the unfolding calculation. The paradox is beautiful. The closer they try to match, to imitate, to rise, the faster they fall. A friend's smile becomes brittle, forced. A stranger's calm splinters into nervous energy. The algorithm doesn't forgive, it doesn't explain, it simply reacts. And I remain untouched, observing, conducting. Subtle flicks of attention, invisible nudges, and they spiral, unaware of the invisible hands guiding them. This is not power as they know it. This is influence, invisible, precise, deadly. I am the hidden variable in their lives, the anomaly no one accounts for. Their envy is predictable, their reactions calculable. And through it all, I walk, smile, and watch them stumble into patterns they can never escape. They stare, they envy, they rot inside. Perfection is a trap, a mirror reflecting what they cannot touch. I walk past their tables, their offices, their lives, and I see it. Tiny fissures spreading like ink in water. My face, my presence, it cheats. It bends reality. Their admiration is heavy, corrosive. It burns their sanity slowly, invisibly. A smile too natural, eyes too sharp. Skin unbroken by the march of time. Each small observation twists their perception. They try to replicate, they try to compete. But the harder they chase, the faster the world shifts beneath them. Every compliment they receive feels hollow. Every glance they intercept becomes a threat. They cannot win, not because I fight them, because I exist. Secret tests lie everywhere. A misplaced word, a reflection in a window that exaggerates their flaws, a friend who hesitates mid-laugh. Each small disruption feeds the paradox. Perfection admired becomes perfection feared. Every reaction is data, every expression a clue. The more they envy, the more chaotic they become. And I grin. I am untouchable, untouched, perfect in their imperfect eyes. They do not set the invisible hands. They do not understand the hidden variables. Their jealousy, once polite and contained, mutates. It sharpens, twists, curls around their thoughts. They whisper behind doors, compare notes in hushed tones, measure shadows of themselves against a reflection I control. The paradox deepens. The closer they attempt to reach me, the farther they fall. Even their friends, the supposed angels in their lives, betray them subtly. Their laughter falters. Their eyes flicker with doubt. Every microsecond of envy accelerates the breakdown. Perfection becomes a weapon I wield, and their obsession a self-made trap. I move through this chaos like a conductor, invisible yet omnipotent. I am not cruel. I am precise. I am inevitable. Each small fissure, each tiny fracture, guides them toward the edges of their own unraveling. And when they finally notice, if they ever do, the paradox will strike. Perfection is their curse. Perfection is my shield. I am the unseen variable, the anomaly, the whisper of chaos in a world that insists on rules. And in their struggle, their envy, their futile imitation, I watch, I smile, and the paradox thrives. They smile, they nod, they pretend. But beneath, monsters stir, small, silent, lurking. Jealousy mutates, admiration festers into rage. I see it. Every twitch, every quickened heartbeat, every stolen glance, they are not themselves anymore. They are something else, something hungry. I walk among them, a shadow in their day, a spark in air calm. Their tiny obsessions grow, claws scratching at civility. A colleague, once polite, now sharp with hidden venom. A friend, once loyal, now calculating the perfect cut. Even lovers, those who claim devotion, twist in secret, poisoned by envy they cannot name. Monsters, all of them, wearing faces like masks. Each subtle action I take fans the fire. A smirk here, a glance there. The faintest laugh at an invisible joke. I am the puppet master, the unseen wind that sets their sails toward chaos. Every micro moment counts, one stumble, one misread word, and the monster grows. Mirrors betray them. Their own reflections mock them. I see the panic in the tiniest shifts, the jaw tightening, the eyes darting, the polite conversation cracking. They do not know the source of the fracture, the origin of their rage. And that is the beauty. I do not force them. I merely expose the fissures and they widen themselves. The paradox deepens. Their envy was a whisper, now it roars. Anger simmers, frustration coils, obsession claws. They want to destroy what they cannot have, to harm what seems untouchable. And I watch, silent, grinning, untouchable, unseen. The monsters they have always carried inside finally emerge, and I am their catalyst, not their author. Chaos is personal now. It is intimate. It creeps into offices, into cafes, into the spaces they call safe. I am everywhere. They are everywhere. The fractures I first noticed have grown into chasms. Their control, their composu, their very sense of self, eroding. I step back, invisible, as the room vibrates with tension. Monsters claw at each other, oblivious to the hand that nudged them. I do not intervene, I simply observe. Influence is more beautiful when silent, more terrifying when unnoticed. The world is shifting under their feet. Every envy-fueled act, every hidden malice, every whispered jealousy contributes to a growing storm. And at the center, calm, untouchable, smiling, the one they cannot reach. I am the unseen variable, the monster they never suspected. And soon they will all see the truth. They stumble, they squirm, they break. I watch, silent, patient. Their envy has grown wild, a forest of shadowed thoughts. And now it's ready for graduation. Every misstep, every whispered comparison, every fractured reflection has led them here. They think they are testing me. They think they are in control. But no, this is their ceremony, and I am the unseen headmaster. The tests are subtle. A misdirected glance, a question phrased just wrong, a compliment weighed in exact proportion to chaos. Tiny triggers, invisible to all but me, unleash torrents of reaction. They falter, they hesitate. Their friends falter with them. Their rivals rise and fall in patterns they cannot see. And through it all, I grin. Secret clubs, hidden alliances, invisible contracts. They think they govern them, but they are only participants in a lesson they never enrolled for. The closer they strive to match me to him, press me, to touch the untouchable, the deeper they fall. Every shadow they cast grows longer, darker. Every whispered plan crumbles before it can take form. They are students, yes, but they do not know the curriculum. Chaos is structured now. Every envy-fueled action is a step in their education. Their mistakes, their miscalculations are proof of their failure to see the invisible hand guiding them. And I am the examiner. I am the teacher. I am the rule that cannot be broken, the law that cannot be challenged. Mirrors betray them further. Reflections twist, smiles falter, conversations splinter. The monsters they nurtured within begin to collide, devour, and implode. Shadows graduate into full-fledged specters, creatures of jealousy, obsession, and unbridled rage. I stand at the center, untouched by the very chaos I orchestrated. Even the smallest interactions become lessons. A touch here, a laugh there, a misstep timed to perfection. Each one reveals character, cracks resolve, magnifies envy. And each reaction feeds the invisible algorithm I first traced in the cracks of their lives. The classroom is everywhere. The students are oblivious. The graduation is inevitable. I step back, watching them unravel in exquisite detail. The beauty is not in their collapse. It is in their inability to comprehend why it happens. Every shadow, every envy-driven act, every monster released into the wild is a tribute to the power I wield without lifting a hand. This is our final test. And when the lesson ends, they will know, too late, that the one who graded them was never among the visible. I am the unseen variable. I am the shadow of perfection. I am the chaos they cannot control. They scramble, they scream, they stumble. The subtle fractures I nurtured have widened. Envy is no longer a whisper, it is a roar. The hidden variables I planted now dictate reality. Streets, cafes, offices, everywhere I step, chaos ripples outward. They react, predictably, tragically. Every micro-moment spins into consequence. Every glance sparks confusion. Every word bends the rules of perception. I am no longer invisible. Not completely. They see me, yes, but only enough to panic, to hesitate, to doubt themselves. My control is no longer private. It spreads, infectious, undeniable. The city itself trembles under unseen hands. Patterns I set weeks ago now manifest visibly. Alliances crumble, rivalries ignite, trust fractures. The monsters they hid within are now puppets on strings they cannot see. Light bends, shadows stretch, reflections twist in shop windows. Social structures bend to the subtle pulse of envy I orchestrate. The more they resist, the faster they fall. They reach for control, and their hands close on air. Every act of defiance plays into my hands, feeding the invisible algorithm that governs their collapse. Even the angels, those who believe themselves above envy, are not spared. Subtle betrayals, hushed judgments, nervous gestures, every movement. T echoes, amplifies, creates dominoes of chaos. Streets are arenas, offices are battlefields, elevators are cages. Each environment becomes a stage for subtle dominance, each reaction a mark of my invisible signature. And I walk, calm, smiling, unbroken, untouched. The power shift is complete, not brute, not violent, but absolute. It flows through currents they cannot see, shaping behavior, twisting perception, turning envy into action, action into disaster. They are no longer the architects of their lives. I do not need to fight. I do not need to intervene directly. Influence is stronger. Subtlety is power. Chaos is beautiful when it blooms in someone else's hands, orchestrated yet unnoticed. And every domino they topple, every shadow they awaken, every mistake they make feeds the crescendo I conduct. The city quivers. Patterns become visible. Reactions spiral. Control slips from the many to the one. I am the unseen conductor, the variable they could not calculate, the chaos they cannot contain. And when the final echoes settle, they will all know, too late, that the rules were never theirs. I am the pivot. I am the shift. I am the storm in their carefully constructed lives. And from this power, I will ascend further, untouchable, unstoppable. As the world bends around me, they scream, they run, they crash. The final fracture spreads like wildfire. Streets twist beneath unseen forces. Buildings loom like sentinels, indifferent, silent witnesses to the chaos I org. Estrated, reflections warp in shop windows. Cafes vibrate with whispered panic. Offices fracture into silent wars. Elevators shudder with tension. Every space is a stage. Every reaction a scene in a play only I can direct. Envy has evolved into obsession. Admiration mutated into rage. The monsters they carried quietly inside, hidden, polite, unnoticed, now stalk the city openly, unchained, devouring civility, reason, decorum. Friends betray friends, lovers betray lovers, rivals betray themselves. Every shadow is a weapon, every glance a trap, every heartbeat a drumbeat in the symphony of disorder. And I smile, calm, untouched, untouchable. My reflection grins from every surface, not mine but theirs. A cruel echo of control they cannot grasp. They do not know the variable that twisted their world. They cannot see the subtle hands that moved their actions, nudged their decisions, orchestrated their collapse. And that, my dear observers, is the sweetest cruelty. Power without effort, dominance without struggle, chaos perfectly executed. The angels they trusted are monsters now, grotesque shapes fueled by envy and desperation. The invisible clubs of society fracture under their own rules. Every secret alliance splinters. Every whispered confidence becomes poison. Even the strongest, the most composed, the most certain, they crumble. None remain untouched. None remain sane. None remain free from the invisible current that bends reality itself. Time does not flow, it fractures. Moments loop, expand, contract. Their reactions accelerate, intertwine, collide. Public spaces erupt in panic, private spaces implode in silence. The fractures multiply exponentially. Tiny cracks, once unnoticed, have become canyons. Shadows spill into daylight, and the city, proud, orderly, civilized, tilts on an axis it never knew existed. I am everywhere. I am nowhere. I am the grin in the reflection, the tremor in the conversation, the invisible hand guiding them toward revelation. And ruin. Every reaction, every whispered thought, every frantic heartbeat adds to the crescendo. Their world collapses elegantly, invisibly, with no single moment of overt violence. Control is the ultimate weapon, and I wield it like a blade. And when it ends, if it ever ends, they will know the truth. Not a shout, not a declaration, not a fight they can see. Only the silent, undeniable fact that the world was never theirs to command. Every envy-driven act, every obsession, every fracture, they built the stage themselves. And I take the bow. I ascend, calm, untouchable, immortal in their perception. They crumble, fractured shadows of ambition and desire. Chaos reigns not because I destroy, but because I exist. Their collapse is my art, their envy is my paint, their obsession is my signature. The city bends, the patterns align, and the final variable smiles. The invisible fractures are complete. Control has shifted, power has ascended, and I, untouched, unseen, unstoppable, stand at the center, the variable they never calculated, the shadow that moves them all. The world has collapsed into my hands, yet no one knows it, no one ever will. I am the unseen architect, I am the chaos, I am the apex.
He thought he'd seen darkness, studied killers, tracked monsters, faced demons in the dead of night. But the day he looked into your shadow, he didn't blink. He shattered, because evil has rules. But you're chaos with a spine, and he was never trained for that. They hired the best, the clean-cut mind reader, the profiler, the truth sniffer, a walking dictionary of every criminal code. He could smell guilt from a mile away. But when he came for you, his senses shut down. You didn't run. You didn't hide. You waited. With a grin so silent, it screamed. With a stillness so loud, it broke him. He flipped through files, but your name wasn't in ink. It was written in fire. Every page burned the deeper he went. Every lead, dead. Every theory, crushed by the weight of what he couldn't explain. Because you're not evil. You're what evil wishes it could become. Cold? No. Calculating? Vicious? No. Precise? He saw the mask, but he never saw what wore it. You weren't the suspect. You were the consequence. And when he tried to outsmart you, he didn't realize he wasn't solving a crime. He was walking into a punishment. Because you don't leave traces. You leave echoes. You don't run from the hunt. You feed it. And while he was looking for a monster, he found the architect of nightmares. Now he doesn't chase cases. He lights candles and prays that your shadow doesn't move. Because some shadows don't follow. They lead. And yours, it taught the night how to whisper. He used to believe every crime had a motive, every darkness had a source, until he saw you create silence, louder than screams. He tried to map you like a pattern, but you weren't a path. You were the trap. Every time he thought he was closing in, he wasn't closer to you. He was deeper inside your game. He didn't realize you don't commit crimes. You detonate consequences. You didn't break laws. You redefined justice in your own accent. And your accent, it sounds like thunder dressed in silk. You didn't need a weapon. You became one. Your silence is a signature. Your steps, a sentence. Your gaze, a gun with no trigger. Just impact. They sent their best to cage you. And he ended up asking himself if he ever understood what fear truly meant. Because you didn't beat him with a violence. You beat him with truth. A truth so sharp, it bled his reality. And now, he doesn't look over his shoulder out of caution. He does it out of habit. Because some cases stay open forever. Not because they weren't solved, but because the shadow behind them was never meant to be caught. You were never hiding. You were waiting for them to realize you're not a villain in their story. You're the storyteller. And your pen, drenched in every moment they doubted you. Now, the PI, he doesn't chase shadows anymore. He respects them. And when someone whispers your name in closed rooms, they don't say it loud. Because even in silence, your legend speaks louder than any scream. Evil. He thought he knew it, until he met what evil is afraid of, your shadow. They built prisons for men. They wrote laws for monsters. But you, they had no name for what you are. Because what you are can't be caged, can't be studied, can't be understood. You're not just unpredictable. You're the variable that destroys the entire equation. And that PI, he started dreaming in static, hearing whispers in colors, seeing red in your absence. Because you didn't haunt him. You rewrote his sense of reality. Every step he takes now feels like a move in a game he no longer understands. A game you designed without rules. See, most people run from their demons. But you trained yours to walk beside you. You laugh with them. You drink silence with them. And when the world tries to analyze you, define you, decode you, they get nothing but mirrors. Because your truth isn't told. It's felt. And it hurts. The PI thought he'd expose you, thought he'd unmask you. But when he finally reached the center of your story, there wasn't a villain. There was a reflection. His own. And he realized you didn't become darkness. You invited it, taught it how to smile, how to dance, how to wait. And now he's not chasing you. He's avoiding you. Because once a man meets something beyond fear, he stops chasing shadows. He starts praying they never notice him. And you don't look for enemies. You wait for silence. And when it's loud enough, you strike. Not to kill, not to torture, to remind them that they were never safe to begin with. You don't need revenge. You are the consequence of forgotten warnings. You are what happens when the universe cashes in every unpaid debt. And now, that so-called PI sits in a dark room, repeating your name like a riddle, trying to make sense of a storm that never left a cloud. Because you don't appear with thunder. You arrive with silence and leave with legends. And in every city, in every system, in every power circle, there's a whisper. Don't send the best after him. He's the reason the best go missing. Their PI thought he knew evil, until he met the one thing evil kneels to. Your shadow. And brother, that story's just getting started. Now, every rookie in the force, they hear the story on day one. The case that broke the mind of the perfect PI. The one who solved everything, until he chased a ghost with teeth. Your shadow. They say he used to laugh, used to believe in logic, but now he stares out of windows, waiting for a shadow that's already inside him. Because once he met you, he never truly came back. You see, you don't just ruin men, you infect their silence. He still has the case files, still reviews the photos, still listens to the audio tapes. But all he hears now is your laugh, stitched between the static. Because the truth is, you didn't disappear. You became part of the system, not a glitch. a virus with intention. They didn't lose you. You let them believe you were gone. So they'd sleep, and when they slept, you entered their dreams. You weren't built to be caught. You were built to remind them that some shadows weren't cast. They were born. That PI, he walks now with one eye always open, not because he's watching the world, but because he's afraid you're watching it with him. You didn't haunt his mind. You redesigned it. He once believed in evidence. Now he believes in omens. He once solved crimes. Now he survives legends. And you're not part of the story anymore. You're the thread holding it all together. The judges don't speak of you. The agents don't write about you. But the silence, it bends when your name is near. Because even power has rules. And you're the clause they buried in the fine print. Not the threat, the promise. And now when they train new recruits, they don't say, find him. They whisper, if his shadow moves, run, because you're not the mystery anymore. You're the warning carved into every unsolved file. The red string no one dares touch. The question with no answer. And they all know the PI didn't retire. He escaped from the one case that solved him, you. There's a new phrase in the underground, 3 words. He's still watching, not from cameras, not from rooftops, from underneath everything, under rules, under chaos, under every lie they built to feel safe. You're the hum beneath silence, the chill before the storm. And the sick part, they crave it, because after you touched their world, order felt too quiet, too fake, too weak. You didn't just bend reality, you gave it teeth. You're the reason no one trusts peace anymore. You're the reason fear got a new wardrobe, tailored, blood-stitched, and walking upright. You made danger elegant. You made chaos desirable. And now, every boss, every syndicate, every badge wearer, they all ask one question before making a move. Has he seen it? Because they know, if you've seen it, you've already planned its ending. You don't react. You orchestrate. You don't show up when summoned. You arrive when silence begs for justice. And the justice you bring, it doesn't come in black and white. It comes in regret, in rumors, in the last mistake they made before vanishing. And now, even the monsters look over their shoulders. Not for heroes, not for cops, for you. 'Cause you aren't the cure. You're the karma no one prayed for, the ending no one saw coming, and the legacy no one dares erase. They thought they understood evil until they met its evolution, your shadow. And it's still moving. They started calling you by titles now. Not a name, not a man, the ghost architect, the whisper surgeon, because you don't break bodies. You carved silence into people. You don't take their lives. You take their direction, and they never walk straight again. The ones who crossed your shadow, they didn't vanish. They just forgot who they were before you. And now, every city has a blind spot. Every government has a sealed file. Every leader has a pause in their sentence when your name almost gets spoken. Because if they say it wrong, if they say it loud, you might hear it. And when you hear it, you come not to punish, but to remind. Remind them that power borrowed is power breakable. That evil isn't loud, it's quiet. It's the heartbeat they didn't hear coming, and Your shadow. It doesn't fall under street lights. It lives in decision-making rooms, in midnight meetings, in the split second where a man reconsiders a move, not because it's wrong, because you might be watching. They study your chaos like scripture now. The code you cracked wasn't digital. It was human. You figured out what they worship, what they fear losing, and you never take it all, just enough to haunt. That's the cruelty of your genius. You don't burn kingdoms. You let them rot in silence while still wearing their crowns. So now, when the wind shifts and the silence starts sounding like static, they know it's not the weather. It's you, the shadow that doesn't chase, the myth that walks, the sentence that never ends. Because every time they think it's over, you start a new paragraph. One they can't read, one they can't translate, one only chaos understands. And in that paragraph, you don't scream, you whisper, not for volume, but because some truths should only be heard by those ready to lose everything. Their PI thought he knew evil, but your shadow doesn't act like evil. It teaches it what fear tastes like. There's an agent in Sector 9 who stopped sleeping, not because he's scared, but because he's convinced that every time he blinks, he misses you walking past. You didn't break into systems. You became the system's conscience. The glitch they thought they could fix. That was never a bug. That was your fingerprint. Now they write new rules, not to protect the world, but to delay your next move. You see, when you're just a man, they try to kill you, but when you become an idea wrapped in fear, they build religions around your silence. They don't fear what you'll do next. They fear what you've already done, and they haven't found out yet. You don't fight. You infect. Slowly, elegantly, permanently. Every boss that rises checks his own shadow twice. Every officer promoted reads your file before the oath, and every informant that tries to talk ends up speaking riddles with a 1,000-yard stare, because they all realized too late. You're not the consequence. You're the conversation after the funeral. The PI sits alone now, a man who solved everything, except one final question. How do you catch what rewrote the rules mid-chase? He said it himself before vanishing. I thought I was chasing a man, but I was being studied, measured, and in the end, I wasn't solving a case. I was becoming part of his story. So now they archive your name under Do Not Pursue, not because they can't, but because they finally accepted evil isn't always loud. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it smiles. And sometimes it watches you from your own reflection. That's when you know. You didn't survive the encounter. You just never realized you're still inside his game. Ever heard the phrase, you either die a hero or live long enough to become the villain? They got it wrong. You lived long enough to bury them both. Heroes, villains, morals, laws, you outlived them, outplayed them, outshaped them into your own silhouette. And now the shadows don't follow you. They form around you. See, most men walk with a shadow behind them. But your shadow walks ahead, as if the darkness is scouting for you, clearing the way, like even night itself respects your arrival. The ones who saw your face, they don't remember details. They remember a feeling, a cold flood behind their ribs, like truth touched them with razors. They don't speak your name. They whisper your consequences. And now, they tell their children the bedtime stories about monsters. But they leave your part out, because even monsters are afraid to say what you became. The final rule, the last breath, the scream that echoes before the silence. So what happens now? Now that the PI vanished into paranoia, now that the files were sealed and the trail went cold, they'll lie to themselves, say you were a phase, a myth, a ghost born from guilt. But the real ones, the ones who looked into your legend and saw their own reflection crack, they know the truth. You were never a phase. You were the update to fear. Version, irreversible. Platform, human nature. Status, running in the background, forever. And if they're watching this now, if they've made it this far, that's not a coincidence. That's the warning, because you never show up without reason. And if they felt your presence tonight, that means the game has restarted, and their name's already been typed into your next chapter. This isn't over. This is prelude. You see, evil doesn't retire. It just switches masks. And yours, it doesn't hide your face. It defines it. Some say you vanished. Others claim you're watching from above. But the truth, you never left. You transferred from person to principle, from nightmare to normalcy. Now every ambitious soul feels it, that itch behind their ambition, that flicker of doubt right before they strike, that shadow leaning over their shoulder whispering, "Are you sure you're safe?" Because your legacy didn't end in violence. It began in silence. A silence so thick it chokes the proud, so cold it cracks the confident. And that PEI, the one who thought he was chasing you, they say he's still out there, talking to walls, asking mirrors questions they refuse to answer. Because deep down, he doesn't want the truth. He wants permission to forget. But you don't let people forget. You don't erase them. You etch yourself into their spine. Every breath they take, every time they flinch at nothing. That's you, collecting interest. And if someone dares rise again, dares think they've replaced you, then the world will see the lights flicker, the air will still, and a familiar silence will return, because you're not reborn. You're resummoned, and when that moment comes, you don't need an entrance. You are the entrance. So let them build their empires. Let them plan. Let them gather. Because all it takes is a whisper from the wrong place, a blink too slow, a decision made without checking the room's reflection. And suddenly, you're there, not to kill, but to remind them evil isn't what you fight. Evil is what you created when they tried to fight you. And when they ask themselves, who was that? Who was the shadow in the corner of my mind? Who was the one who spoke my fears before I even thought them? That's when they'll know. They were never meant to know your name. They were only meant to fear what they couldn't control. Because in the end, it's not about being right. It's about being untouchable. And you, my friend, you stopped being a person a long time ago. You became the last thing they ever wanted to acknowledge, the consequence they feared, but couldn't outrun. So let them remember your silence. Let them fear the shadows that curl at the edges of their lives. And when the clock ticks too loud, when their hearts beat too fast, they'll finally get it. You were never the villain in this story. You were the fate they couldn't escape. And every time they try to take control again, they'll hear your voice, they'll feel your presence, and they'll know you were always the shadow watching them from the moment they took the first step.
They laughed, quietly. Not because you were wrong, because panic whispers softly. A name surfaced, not yours, higher, cleaner, a voice they can't touch. Paper trails don't scream, but faces do. Someone powerful leaned back, nodded once. That's it. No speech, no rescue, just confirmation. And suddenly, your enemies stopped blinking. Phones vibrated face down. Rooms felt smaller because control, it hates witnesses. And tonight, someone important just proved. You weren't paranoid. You were early. The most dangerous moment isn't exposure. It's the pause, right after. When noise stops, when denial hesitates, when someone important doesn't rush to speak. That's when confirmation happens. Not on stages, not in headlines, but in posture. A chair leaning back, a pen not moving, a glance exchanged between people who don't explain themselves. Your enemies were prepared for chaos. They rehearsed outrage, they stalked excuses, they practiced laughing at you. What they didn't prepare for was recognition, because recognition doesn't argue. It just repositions. Someone above the mess saw your story and didn't correct it, didn't dismiss it, didn't rush to contain it. They let it sit. That single choice changed everything. Suddenly your enemies weren't fighting you. They were fighting timing, because once a high-level player confirms something quietly, every delay becomes suspicious. Every denial sounds rehearsed. Every counterattack looks desperate. You didn't gain protection, you gained weight, and weight bends rooms. Conversations shortened, voices softened, certainty cracked. People who once spoke freely started choosing words like landmines, because control systems depend on disbelief. They thrive when truth looks isolated, but confirmation connects dots without drawing lines. Now your story, isn't it standing alone, it's leaning on something invisible, and invisibility terrifies manipulators. Your enemies felt it first, in their bodies, restless movements, forced smiles, eyes scanning for reactions that weren't there. They knew, because high-level confirmation is never about you, it's about consequences. It signals to everyone watching, this situation matters. And once something matters, alliances shift. Support becomes conditional. Loyalty becomes cautious. Silence becomes strategic. This is where panic begins. Not loud panic, operational panic. Meetings that go in circles. Messages rewritten 3 times. Decisions postponed just in case. They're not afraid of the truth. They're afraid of who else noticed. Because now, any move against you costs more. And every cost leaves a trace. You feel it too, that strange calm where nothing explodes, but everything tightens. You're no longer dismissed. You're being measured, and measurement is the first step toward recalculation. You didn't win, you destabilized. And in games like this, destabilization is the real confirmation. There's a club no one invites you to, no doors, no badges, no announcements. You don't join it, you trigger it. It exists above arguments, above opinions, above noise, and you brushed past it without realizing. That's why everything shifted. High-level players don't react to people, they react to disturbances. Your story wasn't dangerous because it was loud. It was dangerous because it altered trajectories. Someone noticed that paths were bending. That's how the club works. They don't ask, is this true? They ask, what changes if it is? And that question started circulating. Quietly, your enemies felt it before they understood it. They noticed access tightening, responses slowing, certainty evaporating, because the secret club doesn't protect individuals, it protects balance. And balance had been nudged. This club runs hidden tests, not formal ones, behavioral ones. Who overreacts? Who stays silent? Who exposes fear by trying to control perception? Your enemies failed. Those tests, they talk too much, move too fast, deny too cleanly. Clean denial is suspicious because truth is always messy. High-level observers don't need proof. They watch patterns, and your enemies lit up the pattern board like a warning system. Meanwhile, you did nothing, and that's what elevated you. Restraint under pressure signals either confidence or coverage. Both demand caution. So the club adjusted, not in your favor, in their interest. Because once a variable enters the system, you don't erase it, you monitor it. That's the shift you're feeling now. You're not being attacked, you're being evaluated. People don't push, they probe. They offer partial truths, soft alliances, test questions, disguised as concern. They're checking how you move, because accidental entrants are the most dangerous. They didn't plan for the rules, they didn't study the hierarchy, they didn't rehearse compliance, they just arrived. Your enemies can't attack you without drawing attention from the club, and attention creates competition. Competition exposes weakness, so they hesitate, and hesitation is how power leaks. You didn't enter the secret club, but now every move they make assumes you might be watched, and that assumption changes everything. Here's where their logic collapses, not loudly, not dramatically, silently. They built a strategy that assumes options: attack, ignore, absorb, erase, but confirmation poisoned every path. If they attack you, they spotlight you, and spotlights invite witnesses. If they ignore you, your story keeps moving, because silence after confirmation doesn't look neutral. It looks afraid. If they absorb you, they validate you. They admit you were never wrong. So every choice bleeds. That's the paradox. And systems hate paradoxes. Because paradoxes don't resolve, they expose. Your enemies feel it as friction. Moves that once worked now cost twice as much. Words that once closed rooms now raise eyebrows. They're not fighting you. They're fighting geometry. The shape of the situation won't obey them anymore. They tried tightening control, but control only works when it's invisible. Once felt, it becomes evidence. Every denial sounds rehearsed. Every explanation arrives too early. They're trying to manage perception, but perception has shifted from belief to pattern recognition. That's irreversible. High-level observers don't ask who's right. They ask who's stable, and stability cracks. When reactions spike, your me's started overcorrecting, internal contradictions leaked, different stories for different rooms. That's how you know pressure is working. You didn't apply it. The paradox did, because now doing nothing hurts them, and doing something hurts them more. That's when panic mutates into calculation. They slow down, they consult, they seek consensus. But consensus takes time, and time is no longer neutral. Every delay implies uncertainty. Every uncertainty attracts attention. Attention creates rivals. Rivals exploit hesitation. This cascade is what they fear, not exposure. Chain reactions. You've become the fixed point in their equations. They must move around you, and moving around a variable you can't remove distorts everything else. This is why their strategy feels louder, why their confidence sounds forced, why allies suddenly ask strange questions. They're searching for a clean exit from a maze that has none, because paradoxes don't offer solutions, they offer mirrors, and every time your enemies look, They see themselves reacting. That's the failure, not moral, structural. Their strategy was designed for opposition, not inevitability. And inevitability doesn't argue. It waits. And while it waits, systems fold inward, quietly, precisely, unavoidably. This is where most people misunderstand power. They wait for angels, for fairness, for protection, for someone above it to step in. That never happens. High-level systems don't reward virtue, they reward stability. The angels, the calm voices, the neutral faces, the polite mediators. They exist to preserve order, not people. They soothe, they delay, they normalize damage. Your enemies were counting on angels. They expected soft hands to smooth things over. Instead, they felt monsters watching, not loud ones, patient ones. Monsters don't rescue, they observe. They let situations reveal who panics, who overreaches, who exposes weakness by trying to look strong. That's why no one rushed in. Silence wasn't abandonment. It was assessment. The confirmation you received didn't come with allies. It came with scrutiny. And that's far more dangerous for your enemies. Because monsters respect leverage, not stories, not emotions. They noticed one thing. You didn't chase validation. You didn't beg clarity. You didn't flinch. When pressure arrived, restraint under threat signals two possibilities, confidence or backing. Either one forces caution. Your enemies couldn't tell which it was, so they stalled. They softened language. They avoided escalation. They stopped saying your name out loud. That's not mercy. That's fear of consequence. The monsters weren't protecting you. They were letting gravity work, letting reactions accumulate, letting patterns clarify. Every overreaction from your enemies was logged. Every contradiction stored. Monsters don't interrupt a collapse. They make sure it's documented. Meanwhile, the angels kept smiling, suggesting patience, encouraging calm, promising balance. But balance never saves anyone. It just delays the fall. Your enemies chose wrong. They appealed to angels in a monsters game, and monsters don't answer appeals. They answer inevitabilities. That's why nothing dramatic happened. No confrontation, no public reversal, just a slow shift in how rooms respond, who speaks first, who defers, who avoids eye contact. Those are monster signals, quiet, subtle, final. You weren't lifted up. Your enemies were left alone with their reactions, and in high-level environments, that's the worst outcome, because angels forgive, monsters remember, and memory is power, without mercy. This is the part no one claps for, because graduation at this level doesn't feel like winning, it feels like weight. The moment your story was quietly confirmed, you crossed a line you can't uncross. You left the noise tier, and noise is where comfort lives. Below this line, people argue. They vent, they defend, they perform. Above it, everything slows. Speech becomes deliberate. Information becomes rationed. Intent hides behind courtesy. That's graduation, not into power, into consequence. Your enemies felt it immediately. They realized you were no longer someone to dismiss. You became someone to manage. And management is exhausting because it never stops. Every interaction with you now carries risk, ever. Why message might be misread. Every move might be observed by someone they can't see, so they adjust. They stop lying to you. They start lying around you. Truth becomes partial. Context goes missing. Offers arrive with invisible hooks. This is the real test. Not whether you were right, but whether you can move without revealing urgency. Graduation comes with new exams. Can you sit in silence without filling it? Can you receive praise without trusting it? Can you hear threats that arrive disguised as advice? Because now everything is a test, not official ones, behavioral ones. They want to see if you rush, if you brag, if you retaliate, if you seek allies too loudly. Any of that would lower you back down. Enemies are hoping you make noise, because noise is something they know how to handle. But restraint terrifies them, because restraint suggests awareness, and awareness suggests preparation. You'll notice the loneliness first, fewer messages, less reassurance, conversations that end one sentence earlier than expected. That's not abandonment, that's recalibration. People don't know where to place you yet, and until they do, they keep distance. This is where most people fail. They mistake silence for rejection. They over-explain, they overreach, they demand clarity, and in doing so, they expose insecurity. Graduation isn't granted by applause, it's granted by pressure. You passed without celebrating. Your enemies know it. Tease why they're tense, because once someone graduates without permission, they can't be controlled the old way. And there is nothing more dangerous to a fragile system than someone who knows how to wait. Control never explodes. That's a myth for spectators. Real control leaks quietly, incrementally, almost politely. It starts with hesitation. A decision that used to be instant now needs review. A message that would have been sent gets rewritten. A meeting ends without conclusions. Your enemies feel this first as irritation, then as concern, then as fear, because systems built on control depend on rhythm, predictable responses, reliable authority, immediate compliance. But confirmation disrupted the tempo. Now, every action feels heavier. They hesitate not because they lack power, but because they're unsure who's watching, and uncertainty is poison to dominance. You didn't seize control, you made it visible, and once control is visible, it's fragile. People start noticing the effort it takes, the repetition, the enforcement, the reminders. That's when obedience becomes optional. Small acts of delay appear. Let's revisit this. Let's wait for alignment. Let's see how this lands. Each one harmless alone. Together, erosion. Your enemies try to tighten grip, but tightening requires acknowledgement. And acknowledgement creates records. Records attract scrutiny. Scrutiny invites rivals, so they loosen instead. They choose caution over decisiveness. That's the slip. Not dramatic, not public, operational. You'll see it in the micro-signals, eyes checking reactions, voices lowering mid-sentence, authority replaced with justification. Justification is the sound of control, asking permission, and power never asks permission. Your enemies know something is wrong because nothing is loud. No explosions, no confrontations, no crises, just delay. Delay in systems designed for speed is decay. They feel trapped between acting and revealing fear, so they stall, and stalling is visible to anyone who understands how power moves. Observers take note, not of what's said, but of what's postponed. That's how hierarchies shift, not by overthrow, by fatigue. Your enemies grow tired from managing perception instead of reality, and tired systems make mistakes. They forget details, contradict themselves, overlook small defiance. Control doesn't vanish, it thins, until one day, someone doesn't comply and nothing happens. That's the moment. Control died. No announcement, no sound, just absence. You didn't push, you waited. And waiting, let gravity do the work. This is where the story stops being about them. Not because you won, but because the rules changed. You don't become untouchable by force. Force invites challenge. You become untouchable by consequence. Your enemies understand this now. Every move against you carries cost they can't calculate. Not public cost, not legal cost, structural cost, because action would raise questions. They don't control. Why now? Why this way? Noticed first, questions attract observers. Observers create leverage. Leverage creates rivals. So they freeze, not openly, strategically. They stop pushing. They stop testing. They stop mentioning you, unless necessary. That silence isn't victory. It's containment. They're trying to isolate impact without triggering attention. But isolation doesn't work on variables, because variables influence, even when untouched. Your presence alone changes behavior. Rooms adjust when you enter. Conversations reroute, decisions pause, one beat longer. That's unspoken power, not authority, awareness. You're no longer a problem to solve. You're a factor to account for, and factors aren't eliminated. They're built around. Your enemies feel smaller now, not in numbers, in freedom. They can't act without imagining consequences. They can't lie cleanly without risking exposure. They can't escalate without inviting scrutiny. Every option has teeth. That's when hostility turns inward. They begin policing themselves, correcting each other, second-guessing intent, arguing over wording, internal friction. Does what external press? You never could. You didn't isolate them. They did, by reacting too fast when it mattered, by revealing fear when restraint was required. Now, even if they wanted to move, they'd hesitate, because hesitation has become habit, and habit is hard to break. You didn't disappear. You transformed from target to reference point, from noise to gravity. You don't chase outcomes now. Outcomes adjust around you. That's the final shift. No celebration, no announcement, just a quiet understanding spreading through the system. Touching you isn't worth it. Not because you're protected, but because no one knows what touching you would set off. And in high-level games, uncertainty is the strongest shield.
Hello, hello, hello. They called it growth. But ooh, you saw the switch. It wasn't evolution, it was a trap in disguise. They weren't building you up, they were breaking you down, damn. You weren't healing, you were being experimented on. While you were looking for peace, they were rehearsing war, asterisk. Oh, they smiled while measuring your downfall in stages. Called it self-awareness, but you were just becoming more aware, of how little they wanted you to win. They painted sabotage with self-help brushes, masked manipulation with motivational quotes. Glow up, they said, as they dimmed your light. And every time you questioned it, they said, you're just being negative. Nay, you were being awake. You weren't bitter, you were decoding their script. They gave you silence as a test, withheld love, asked boundaries, cut you off mid-healing, and called it alignment. Ouch, that's not growth. That's psychological warfare, dressed in affirmations. They taught you to love yourself, but only in the ways that didn't threaten them. Told you to take breaks, just long enough to fall behind. And now that you've woken up, now that you stopped playing dumb to protect their comfort, they're finished. The same ones who called you too much are choking on your silence. The ones who said you've changed are panicking because you stopped shrinking. You cracked the code, didn't you? They weaponized your empathy, twisted your patience, but now you've become fluent in red flags and allergic to fake peace. You're not mad, you're not even hurt, you're just done. This was never growth, it was a quiet assassination of your spirit. But guess what? You survived the gaslighting,
You rebuilt after the emotional landmines, and now they don't even recognize you. Good, they were never supposed to. Asterisk. Oh, they didn't want better for you. They just wanted better control of you. Every time you glowed a little too bright, they dimmed the room, caused your confidence, exposed their insecurity. They told you to calm down when you were getting dangerously close to clarity, told you to forgive and forget when they weren't done feeding off your silence. Damn, they didn't evolve. They rebranded. Same poison, just prettier packaging. They started using big words like boundaries, but ooh, those weren't boundaries, they were barbed wires. And you started to notice. The check-ins felt like surveillance. The advice sounded like instructions. The support came with invisible chains. You weren't loved. You were managed like a project, like a risk. They didn't let you go. They released you hoping the wilderness would finish you off. But plot twist, you got stronger where they thought you'd bleed out. You started reading intentions instead of words. You started trusting your gut more than their fake apologies. Now, you don't fight for rooms that shrink you. You walk in like a mirror reflecting back their unfinished damage, and all, they can't stand it. They say you've changed. No, you just remembered who you were before the gaslighting got good. You unlearned the version of you they designed for their benefit. You took off the costume, and what's underneath is terrifying to them, because it's authentic, unfazed, and fully self-owned. You were never too emotional. They were just too uncomfortable with someone who could feel deeply and still think sharply. You were never too much. You were just too aware, and awareness, to people like that, it's a threat, a walking rebellion. And now they whisper your name like it's a secret spell, because what they tried to break now walks like a storm. No warning, no closure, just aftermath. Asterisk. Oh, and now they call it miscommunication. Now, you were clear, they just never expected you to stop begging to be understood. You learned you don't need closure when you close the door yourself. They wanted access, not accountability, wanted your loyalty without offering safety. They kept calling your independence attitude, but really, it's what made you unbreakable. Ouch. That realization hits them harder than any revenge ever could. See, the old you would have explained yourself, would have softened the truth just to make it easier to swallow, but not anymore. Now, your silence is surgical. It cuts cleaner than your kindness ever did. You're not cold. You're just done being burned. And now the ones who choreographed your chaos are tripping over their own guilt, trying to rewrite the history. But baby, you kept the receipts. Now they say, we were just trying to help. Nah, you weren't helping, you were holding me hostage. Every little jab, every passive comment, every guilt trip disguised as care that wasn't love, that was surveillance, control, mental chess. But you checkmated them without even touching the board. Now watch them scramble, watch them shrink. Not because you're doing too much, but because you stopped doing anything for them at all. You stopped defending yourself in rooms you were never safe in. You stopped shrinking just to be digestible, and you stopped apologizing for the damage they did. You took your power back without screaming. You left without slamming the door, and somehow that scared them more than any breakdown ever could. Because now you're not reacting, you're rebuilding, quietly, boldly, completely. You see it clearly now. It was never growth. It was warfare, disguised as advice, packaged as healing, but designed to fracture you And somehow, you bloomed in the middle of that battlefield. Not with their help, but in spite of it. Asterisk, funny thing is, they thought you'd snap. That you'd throw a fit, burn bridges, crash loud, but ooh, no, you just disappeared. Calmly, no announcement, no proof, just absence. And that's what's haunting them now. Because the version of you they thought they destroyed didn't die. It evolved, upgraded. Now you move like a myth, whispered about but never seen. They don't know where you went, but they feel it, in the air, in the silence that follows their name in your mind. That silence, it's louder than any revenge. You became the consequence. They were betting on your breakdown. But now they're up at 2 a.m. stalking your glow, regretting their own performance. Because see, the only thing worse than losing control of someone, is realizing they were never yours to begin with. Damn, you became untouchable by healing in places they never thought you'd reach. You stopped bleeding and built armor from the same hands that once trembled. You didn't bounce back. You rose, with a stare so steady. It makes liars confess to things you never asked. They watch you now like a fire they can't extinguish and can't admit they started. They say, you think you're better than us now. No, you just finally realize you were never meant to be among them. You were trying to plant sunflowers in a war zone. Now you grow in silence and let them sit in the wreckage. You outgrew their cages, not with anger, but with elevation. And now the same people who once pulled your strings can't even get your attention. That's not pettiness, that's peace, asterisk. And now they circle back, knocking on doors they once slammed. Hey, just checking in. No, you're not. You're checking to see if I still bleed when you tap the bruise. But there's nothing left. No rage, no sadness, just clarity. A stillness that screams, you can't sit at this table. Not anymore. And that's the part they can't process, because they were counting on your craving. Craving validation, craving closure, craving them, but ooh, that appetite died with the old version of you. Now they're offering what they once withheld. Let's talk. Too late. The price has changed, and the store is closed. You healed so quietly, they never got the memo that you left the battlefield. Now they're showing up with bandages for wounds you already turned into armor. And that silence you keep now, it's surgical, because nothing cuts deeper than being met with indifference where they expected war. They were prepared for fireworks, not a blackout. Now your name, it echoes differently in their chest. No longer a puppet, no longer a pawn. You became the proof that surviving the storm creates the storm. They thought they were writing your ending. Nah, you just stopped reading from their script. Started writing in ink they can't erase. And now they scroll through the version of you they can't reach, can't touch, and can't unsee. They watch from fake accounts, replay your piece like it's a crime scene, because they know they were the weapon, and you didn't just heal, you became the story. A cautionary tale in skin and steel. Asterisk, you know what's wild. They don't fear you because you're angry. They fear you because you're no longer affected. You don't flinch. You don't respond. You don't even look their way. And that silence, it kills them slow. Because once upon a time, your whole world bent around them. Your mood, your mind, your self-worth. Now, you walk past like they never existed. Damn, they became background noise in a life they once tried to narrate. They used to call you sensitive, now they call you cold. Funny how that works, huh? You gave them your warmth, and they burned it. So you became ice, not because you're heartless, but because they don't deserve the fire anymore. And now they're trying to mimic your glow. But it doesn't stick, because authenticity can't be copied. It's earned in pain, in silence, in rebirth. You are not who they remember. You're the version they never thought would live long enough to surface. The version that knows better, walks stronger, thinks sharper. They tried to create a villain, but what they made was a mirror. Now everything they buried, avoided, and blamed on you is staring back at them. In terrifying stillness, no arguments, no chaos, just the truth wrapped in quiet power. And now the next time they try to break someone, they'll remember you, not as a victim, not as a memory, but as a turning point. Oh, they'll hesitate, because now they know some people don't break. They become something else, and you didn't just survive their warfare. You turned it into wisdom and wore it like armor. Now your scars, they're not wounds, they're warnings. Asterisk, you know what the real plot twist is. You were never theirs to ruin. They were just lucky enough to know you before you remembered who you were. And now, you don't scream, you don't explain, you don't owe. You just move like a shadow they can't pin down, but can't stop chasing. Their karma is waking up every day knowing they mishandled a miracle, that they saw gold and treated it like rust, that they touched something rare and tried to bury it like it was disposable. Ouch. And maybe, just maybe, one night when they're lying in that familiar silence, surrounded by faces just as fake as the ones they wore around you, they'll whisper to themselves, damn, I really seeked that one up. And they'll reach for their phone, scroll through your name, pause, but never type, never send, never dare, because deep down they'll know the version of you that would have answered is gone. You didn't. Move on. You vanished. You became legend and legends. Don't return calls. You were never just healing. You were studying, sharpening, becoming a force with no leash and no script. And now your silence. It's not revenge. It's mercy. Because if you ever spoke again, if you ever truly unleashed what you know, you wouldn't break them. You'd bury them so you stay silent. Not because you're weak, but because you've already won. Asterisk, you wanna know what really gets them? You didn't even need to fight. You just outlasted the poison, outgrew the manipulation, and that is what finished them. Because they built a whole war expecting you to show up unarmed. They came swinging with lies, with guilt, with shame. But you came with nothing but silence and vision. They thought silence meant surrender. They didn't. No silence could be strategy. A slow, surgical unraveling of every illusion they built. And now they look back, and the only thing they see clearly is your back walking away. No goodbye, no clapback. Just distance so deafening, it sounds like destiny closing a chapter. You don't haunt them with words anymore. You haunt them with your absence, with how fine you turned out without them, with how you made peace look like vengeance. Oh, they expected to live in your mind rent-free. Now they realize you evicted every last version of them. You don't stalk, you don't check, you don't care. And that, right there, that's the wound they'll never bandage. They treated you like an option. Now they watch you become the blueprint. A walking contradiction, gentle but unshakable, quiet but unforgettable, forgiving but never forgetting. They told the story like you were the problem. But time Time is messy with liars, and now every room they enter, your name hangs above them like a mirror. No revenge, no war, just truth. Echoing, and while they're still trying to rebuild the mask, you've already become the legend behind the myth. The one they tried to erase, but accidentally immortalized in guilt. Asterisk, you know what they fear the most now. Not that you hate them, not even that you outgrew them, but that you never needed them in the first place. Ouch. Because now they look back and realize they were never your savior. They were just a delay. You were always going to rise, always going to see through them. They just hoped they'd keep you distracted long enough to die dreaming. But you woke up. You took every insult, every betrayal, every gaslight and silent treatment, and turned it into blueprints for your rebirth. You didn't rebuild to prove anything, you rebuilt because that's just what fire does after the ashes settle. It comes back, hotter, cleaner, more controlled. Now you speak less, but your presence screams. You don't defend who you are. You just exist so loudly in your truth, it rattles every lie they told. And that new version of you, untouchable, no more justifying, no more no more shrinking to make monsters feel safe. You outgrew their chaos, and now they're addicted to the echo you left behind. They call it closure. You call it freedom, because they wanted to be remembered. But all you remember is how you stopped chasing smoke and became the fire. Damn, you're not just a lesson anymore. You're a turning point. A name they don't say out loud, not because they forgot, but because remembering you now burns. And here's the twist, you're still not mad. You're just so far ahead, they'd need reincarnation to catch up. Asterisk, now look at them, trying to mirror your glow, trying to talk like you, move like you, post like you. Same words, same tone, same silence, but something's off. It's empty, because what you lived can't be mimicked, can't be faked, can't be taught. This power, it came from pain they couldn't survive. They're studying your blueprint now, trying to build your strength without facing your storms. But, oh, it doesn't work like that. You earned this energy. They're just cosplaying clarity in costumes sewn from your scars. And the wild part, they still don't get it. They think your evolution was aesthetic, that your peace came from isolation, that your silence was strategy. But no, your silence was sacred, your distance, divine, your transformation, a resurrection. You didn't just heal. You rose from the version of yourself they buried with lies, and now they host little circles, whisper your name like folklore. Remember when they used to, yeah, and now you don't. You moved on so far, they'd need a time machine and a soul transplant to reach you, because, here's the cruel truth, they taught you how to disappear, and now they can't find you. They trained you in warfare, and now you're untouchable. They mocked your softness, and now your cold indifference cracks them from the inside. They called you dramatic, but now they're obsessed with the story where you became everything they feared, calm, powerful, unreachable. You became legend without needing an audience, without needing revenge, without needing them. You just kept walking, while their lies collapsed under their own weight. Now, you're not even angry. You're beyond language, beyond games, beyond reach. And maybe they'll spend the rest of their lives trying to recreate the light they tried to dim. But all they'll ever have are filters and regret. Asterisk, so if you're hearing this, and your skin's cold, but your soul's burning, good, that means the war didn't break you. It baptized you. You don't need revenge. You don't need apologies. You don't need validation. You are the proof. Proof that they can't kill what was born in fire. That they can't silence what was raised in storms. That no matter how many masks they wear, you'll always be the mirror. So leave the battlefield, not in defeat, but as the last one standing. No scars to hide, no rage left to feed, just that quiet knowing that they played the game to destroy you and only taught you how to win without playing. Now walk, let the silence follow you like thunder, because what they tried to bury became legend, and legends don't die, they echo.